Right, so everything we can do with those other selectors, we can do also with something called a query selector, which, to be honest, I gotta tell you, I think this is newer in JavaScript. I honestly don't remember this one. I always use the get element by IDs and get all of those. This one is, I can honestly say I haven't used this one very much. It must be newer because I flip back and forth between jQuery, vanilla JavaScript, and I'm thinking that unless I just haven't used it, this is kind of a newer release. But anyways, it's pretty powerful. It's pretty cool actually. So query selector methods returns the first method that matches a specific CSS selector. So we can now leverage our CSS knowledge of CSS here in our selector. So here is where you can use some of these classic tags that you learned in CSS. Valid CSS selectors, you can use this method for the popular options that you already know. So the selector, query selector, returns the first match. Select query selector all returns all the elements. So make note of that, specific to CSS selector. So we can go and use that hashtag header like we normally would with CSS, and we can use that to grab the header tag, nice and clean. We also have access to that universal selector. Remember that universal selector in CSS? That matches everything in the page, all types. We can just put that in the selector and then just select everything in the whole page. But if we use query selector, remember it's the first element it runs into. So if it's the body tag or whatever, it'll just grab the body tag. If you have all elements, it'll just grab everything in your page, and you have access to everything all at once, which is pretty awesome. Same thing with the type. So we had the document, document.getElement by tag name. Here we just can find the type. So like this query selector is has multi-purpose here. You just feed it in the element you want. It's going to grab that first heading. Again, singular. Otherwise, grab everything with the H2. It's so easy. Like I said, I haven't leveraged this one too much. I haven't really seen the syntax a lot, to be honest. Class selector, same thing. We got that dot class selector. Just walk right up to it and just, dot menu item, same thing. If you're great at CSS, I'm sure this is going to be easy for you, right? Find all elements, query selector all. ID, same thing. We tried to use the hashtag ID with get element by ID, and it didn't work. Here we just feed it # logo. Works great. Unique in the document. So yes, query selector all is not going to work because it should be just one. So here's a case where you can't use query all. You're just using one element. We didn't really work much with attributes. Some of you, I remember you guys that you were using attributes a little bit in the selection. I didn't give the whole list. There's a lot more ways of hitting different, matching different attributes. But here you can actually grab, like, for instance, we had the media tag that had autoplay. So we would have to use the angle bracket, the square bracket, to actually select all the elements that have that attribute. So attributes, there's many ways to get at the different like regex expressions of them. But here we just have the attribute, or we have the attribute equals to value, and we can target that. Same thing, singular, plural. Grouping, so that we remember this, you can actually select. So here you can select grouping selector, much again like CSS. You comma separate them. So the selector list will match any element in that group. So if you wanted to get all of the paragraphs, following finds all divs and paragraph elements. So if you want to select all divs and paragraph elements, you're going to use the query all. I'm sure if you use the query selector, you're just going to grab. That'd be interesting actually to find the first occurrence. Probably would have to try that out. It'll probably just return one. Child combinator. So some of you may not know some of the stuff. It's just ways of mixing and matching. You may not have tried this at CSS, but there's a way to find the children. Since we're talking about traversing the DOM later on with children, so you could basically grab all the child elements that are directly under the UL. So if you had an unordered list, you could select all the list items in this way. You can actually mix and match it with styles, right? So this one would select all the LIs that are directly inside a UL element with the class nav. Now this is a little bit, more advanced CSS, but it's just part of it. That you could potentially use this, right? You may know this one, descendants. So this would grab selector space selector. Again, combining it. I spelt it wrong at the top. But we've probably used this before. Remember we had like grab all the spans within a paragraph. This one grabs all this, grab the anchor tag that's within the paragraph. So this one will match, that one should be query selector all probably. Seems super simple to me. I like how this one looks, to be honest. Trying to go back to the channel here. Does it give me a chat? I thought I had a message there. If the full stack, I wanted to confirm if the full stack assignment has been graded. No, it has not been graded. To be honest, I'll be honest with you guys. I just need to get through this week. Once I get through this week, for me, I'm almost hitting I'm hitting all my content that I already have. So right now is a busy week for me. I have to build this entire week as I go. So once I get through this week, then I have the weekend to mark the assignments. And then going forward, next week I maybe have the lab test to come up with, which is not too bad. And then one more class I have to build. After that, from then until December, until we end, I basically have every class, every lab, and every exercise already built, because I taught full stack 3 and 4 already. So for me, full stack 1 and 2 has been just a feverish pace, and I'm hoping and happy to get to next week, because I go from a 70 to 75 hour week to like a 55 hour week. So for me, I'm looking forward to hitting my old content, and then you'll just see a shift in the whole material, because I've taught 3 and 4 already, probably twice. So the content's a lot more mature, to be honest, and it gives me more time to stay on top of all this stuff. So yes, to answer your question, it will be marked, but it is not marked yet. So plus we have intercession too, so it's a way for all of us to kind of have a break and catch up on stuff, right?
Hi, Mike, just a quick question regarding the classes. So can we use the same class for defining the elements in the CSS as well as in the document structure, just to write one?
Sorry, the question was, can we use the same class in the query selector?
Yeah. So, first of all, for selecting the queries, and second of all, for styling it as well. So.
Oh yes, like you can use. So query selector to me seems more. I don't know. It seems easier to use. So you can either use the document get by or query selector, whichever one is most comfortable to you. I'm liking the query selector, to be honest. It seems really fantastic, but you can use both. They're both available to you, to be honest. Some people don't know CSS very well, so then they would have to be very explicit, like get document element by class. But if you know CSS selecting very well, it can this would be easy for you right now. I look back at these ones, and I really like these ones, to be honest. So yes, you can grab them, and then once you have the elements, we haven't gone through modifying them, but then when you grab the element, you can apply a style to it. So you can actually change styles, the attributes of things. Cool. So let's. I wanted to do the lab, but I think we're already behind on those labs. So we might have to do like a review on that stuff. So let's quickly go through this. We have all these elements here. You can see we have a menu. We have some selectors here. We have some buttons. So what I did here is we have all this big markup now. So we have all these class, we have current, containers, all this stuff, right? So we can use this query selector in the same way. So if we were to look at this and we looked at the info. Well, let's refresh it. Did it actually load anything? Yes, it did. Whole bunch of stuff going on. This first selector grabbed everything, 33 nodes. And then it got specific. It grabbed the H1. And then we grabbed all the H2s. And then we grabbed the menus with the menu items. And then we grabbed, you know what I'm saying? We grabbed the ID, probably element by ID, the logo. And then we did some other things. So we can do everything in the same way, although if you look at it, it gives a little bit of a different kind of markup for the collection. It's not HTML collection, it's a node list, but that's still, you can still work with it, right? So how did we do it? We went and used query all, grab everything with this universal selector. Then, as you can see, we're only going back and forth between these two things. So grab all the H1s with the query selector. So that's grab the singular one, right? Grab all the H2s. Then grab all the ones with this style, dot menu item, as we know. And then use the query selector to grab the ID by ID. And then grab all the paragraphs that have an anchor tag. And then we use some other kind of combinator, right? So already you can see you're only dealing with two, and you're relying on your CSS knowledge here. So I like this one. I don't know. To be honest, I'm surprised. I'm so used to using these other ones here, right? So maybe I'm just looking. Maybe because I've spent so much time in jQuery, you know, coming back to this. Yeah, you can do a lot. So that's that. And the for lab 4 is so exercise 5 really was just you learned in exercise 4 and rewrite it with the query selectors. So now you know them. It probably should be easier than exercise 4. So that's that one. All right, so we got through the lecture. I wanted to quickly note that you know, we tried to go over the exam, but we already lost the lab, so we got to kind of make it up. I put the final exam Q&A in this repo with the questions and answers. So you may go and look all up the multiple choice yourself. I think I don't need to read it back to you. So that there it is there. I'm going to try to put the quiz as well, you know, the quiz answers results in here. So you may look at that as well. So we also we're behind on some labs because we were taking up that. So I think we didn't even look at loops. So let me quickly at least spend 10 minutes. I know we're behind on arrays, but let's at least look at the loops from that. I'll try to spend 10 minutes and then let you go on with your night. Because we didn't go over this code. I just want to look at it. JavaScript loops, it was probably last Tuesday. Just to refresh ourselves, we'll quickly look at it. I think there's 5 questions. Hopefully we can get through it all. We'll see how time goes. Don't want to keep you guys longer than I have to. So exercise 1 was a function. Find odd or even, take 0 parameters, and then it loops from 0 to 10. Checks if it's odd or even, and outputs if it's odd or even. So we had that. So mine looked like this. So it was, again, I'm using const keyword, which is the same as var. As we're getting closer and closer to ES6, we're going to start using these a lot. Yeah, I did an inline if statement. You certainly didn't have to use an inline if statement, but you know, basically iterate over up to 10. Check with this remainder whether or not it's even or odd. You can certainly do that in one line if you use those ternary operators. I just was explicit here for this purpose. See if it runs. Cross your fingers. Hope to die. It does. Yes, right. So it does actually do it. Now, like I said before, we could actually have, you know, we could have done something like this. You know, we could have done something like that where we had, you know, we had like we had var message equals 2, and then this is like our if statement, you know, even or odd, right? And then at the end we just kind of we just console log the message, right? Something like that. We could do that. And then check that I closed off all my curly brackets, my curly braces, and then run that. Does that run? It does. See, no spacing. I didn't get the spacing right, but you know, maybe I might add something like that, right? So I could do that in one line, but you didn't have to. Just kind of being explicit in that. This is perfectly fine, but using that Elvis operator certainly saves a bit of time. All right, what was number 2? So number 2 was hello world, track takes a parameter number, check whether the number is a number or not. Is the parameter, if it's a parameter, then say hello world. If it's a number, otherwise goodbye world. You may need to use a loop. So basically pass in 5, it does it that many times. True, hello, null, undefined. So this is where we got caught because I didn't want to show too much of it, but now that we talked about this one, I improved my is numeric lookup here. So, you know, it's not good enough, as we realized, to just use is nan in this case. We need to check some other things, as you remember from full stack 1. You know, I wanted to just show is nan, just not to confuse anybody, but basically here I have a check numeric, and I built myself a function here that it does a few things. It checks, is it non-numeric? It tries to figure out if it can parse it and if it's finite. I messed around with some of these built-in features just so with numeric based in the number object that's global, just to make it a little bit better. Because as we know in previous examples, we you know, it can fail in some of these cases because these can for a 1, and then we get that whole kind of deal where some things are passing, some things are not passing, right? So, all right, so yeah, so it works for this one here. Let's see it 5 times. All right, worked 5 times. What was some other cases here? So we had true, we had goodbye, goodbye, goodbye. Is that gonna work? Goodbye, goodbye world, hello world, goodbye, goodbye, goodbye. So one of those things that must have fell through in one of those checks. It looks like maybe in one of those checks it did actually make it through. I'm not sure which one here. On true, does it fail? Goodbye world. So in one of my things here, it probably skips through. It didn't actually exit. So maybe somehow I didn't exit here. It just went here and then it skipped through. So I probably would have to maybe do a return statement here to kick it out of the function. There you go. So that right there, my friends, is a situation where without that return statement, it'll continue, which you don't want, right? You don't want that because it'll continue and flow through. So really, there should be, that's actually a bug. There should be a return statement here to exit out of that function execution. Yes, sometimes you need to short circuit it, as we talked about, right? All right, so that was, I'm trying to go fast just so we, you know, we give you time here. So let's see how far I can get. Function greater than size, takes no parameters, calculates a random local variable of size, does a while loop, increments the counter, outputs the size in the counter. So you may need, so basically random numbers here, and basically it'll calculate the random number and keep doing the while loop until it is greater than the random number. So yes, you needed to use the, oh, there's only 4 questions, good. We needed to use this math random. So greater size, greater than, we calculate a random number. So how I did it was math random number. I kept it to 0 to 10, times it by 100, and I floored it just to make sure I got an integer and not a decimal. And then while this count was less than size, it'll continue, right? While true, until such point as the counter, which gets incremented here, because we're not using a for loop, we have to increment it, until this evaluates to false, right? Or memory exception, or memory runs out of memory, then it'll continue, and then we will, that's how we'll exit out. So if we got that, expression right, it should end at some point. So here it's 88, it stopped. If I run it again, it's random. It should be 14. If I run it again, it is 50. If I changed it and I got this wrong, where the count was greater than the size, it could potentially, oh, maybe that's not, maybe that is, that'll always be true. So you can actually, let's see here. If we actually, there's ways to short circuit it. Obviously, if we have it to false, it will never stop, right? It'll keep running and running and running until, oh, while true, I'm sorry, that evaluated quickly to exit out. While true, it'll continue running until an exception happens. So let's be nice and stop that one. All right, so I think there was only one more, and it was create an HTML file. So we were starting to move towards the HTML again. invoke a start clock with a do while loop, right? We needed to use a do while loop because we needed to show that, you know, the reason why we use a do while loop is to grab the input from the user. Quick nested 10 count. After the 10 count, it'll ask you a question, you want to stop or not. And, you know, as far as I can tell, we grab the solution from, sorry, we grab the response back from the user, and then we quit. Let me see what I'm trying to talk about here. Loops, and this was exercise 4. And if we open up the console quickly, right, do you want the clock to stop? Cancel. No, I don't. So if I'm actually showing the developer tools in the console window, sorry, you can't see it. I'll put it on the bottom here. All right, do I want to cancel? No, no. Where's my messages? Oh my God, what's happening? Yes, I want to stop. Oh, it didn't show me. So there you go. It didn't actually show me right away, I don't think, because of all the canceling. So there we go. Yes, it is. Okay, so the more I delay, you can see it's actually pausing a little bit. If I probably walked away from the computer and came back, this wouldn't be 155. It would be, you know, 156, and then when we click yes or okay, it cancels. So going back to the browser, we have that HTML file, which is very simple. Probably today you're already used to it again. We do an external link to a file, ex4.js, and it looks like this. Now we're triggering the, so we have to invoke it because we don't know how to tie into any events yet, page events. So we invoke it here. Starts off, I'm using my constant because I don't want var to overwrite this thing because a constant makes it read-only in the sense that you can't rename it. I'm using an expression. I have an action that's set to false, and here's how I set my do while loop up, right? So while my action is not true, so basically I negate this while it is so true will negate to false. So this will always be true. It'll continue and continue and continue until such time as when the user clicks cancel. So it'll go through the first iteration, it'll go to 10 count and output the date time. And here I format it nicely with a 2.gmt string. And I keep looping and looping, and then I grab, hey, you wanna stop it or not? This will be true, false. If he clicks cancel, it'll be false, and I negate it to true. So I keep going, keep going, keep going until he selects OK, which is true. And then true negates to false, right? And then I exit out of my loop, and then I'm done. So this is why you would use a while loop, do while, just to grab input from the user. I honestly don't know when you would really use a do while loop. There may be some other cases with data, but yeah, I haven't really used do while loops too much. It's usually for loop or while loop. Do while only really for menus and console apps and things like that. So there's 4 questions there. We caught up on that one. We got to catch up on the array one. But yes, so without further ado, let me quickly at least stop recording. All right, cool. So